Welcome. In this lecture, we will discuss Clostridioides difficile infection in adults from the perspective of the inpatient clinician. We will focus on practical diagnosis, severity classification, inpatient treatment decisions, discharge planning, and what to do when symptoms return after hospitalization. Before we begin, a quick educational disclaimer. This lecture is designed to teach clinical reasoning, not to replace local protocols or patient-specific decision-making. Clostridioides difficile testing pathways, formularies, isolation policies, and dosing protocols vary by institution, so always align bedside decisions with your local guidance. If you remember only one concept, remember this chain. C. Difficile care starts before the lab result. You first suspect the diagnosis, isolate early, test wisely, stage severity, treat based on severity and episode number, reassess the trajectory, prevent recurrence, and discharge with a clear follow-up plan. By the end, you should be able to decide who should be tested, classify severity without overcomplicating it, select a treatment path based on severity and whether this is an initial or recurrent episode, and create a discharge plan that anticipates recurrence without reflexively ordering a test of cure. Let us build the lecture around a patient. A 72-year-old adult is admitted after laparoscopic cholecystectomy. During the admission, he receives broad-spectrum antibiotics for a suspected biliary infection. On hospital day 5, he develops frequent loose stools, abdominal cramping, and a mild fever. We will follow this patient through the major decisions clinicians face. Before we follow our patient through the lecture, take 30 seconds with me to look at the organism because the biology of C. difficile drives every clinical decision that follows. C. difficile is an anaerobic gram-positive bacterium that produces spores. Those spores resist alcohol, which is why soap and water and bleach matter for infection control. The bacterium has a two-phase life cycle. The vegetative phase is the active phase that produces toxins and causes symptoms. The spore phase is dormant, survives anti-CDI antibiotic treatment, and is responsible for recurrence and person-to-person transfer. Toxins A and B are the actual disease drivers, which is why toxin detection supports active infection, while molecular tests can detect asymptomatic colonization. The disease most commonly begins when antibiotics disrupt the colonic microbiome, which is why antibiotic stewardship is the most powerful prevention tool we have. And because healthcare environments are reservoirs, hospitalization itself is a meaningful risk factor. Keep these 5 facts in mind. Every clinical decision ahead maps back to them. The first teaching point is that C. difficile is not diagnosed by a test alone. You need a compatible syndrome. In our patient, the timing matters. He has new diarrhea after inpatient antibiotic exposure, and he is an older adult in the hospital. That combination makes C. difficile clinically plausible, so testing can be appropriate if there is no better explanation. This slide prevents one of the most common inpatient errors. Do not send formed stool. Do not test a patient without diarrhea or ileus. Do not repeat tests during the same episode unless the clinical situation truly changes. And do not test for cure after the patient improves, because tests can remain positive after clinical recovery. This is the diagnostic workflow I want residents to remember. The first step is the symptom syndrome, not the test. If the patient has new significant diarrhea or ileus, place them on contact precautions while you evaluate. If there is a clear alternative cause, do not reflexively send C. difficile testing. If there is no better explanation, test appropriately. And if the patient looks severely ill or fulminant, treatment should not wait for every lab detail to return. Nucleic acid amplification testing is very sensitive, so a negative result makes C. difficile unlikely. Glutamate dehydrogenase is also a screening tool, but a negative result depends on the assay and local algorithm. A toxin-positive result in the right patient supports active toxin-mediated disease. A molecular positive but toxin-negative result is the danger zone. It may be infection with low toxin detection, or it may be colonization. That is where clinical judgment matters. Now classify severity. Green is non-severe disease. Yellow is severe but not fulminant, often marked by leukocytosis, kidney injury, frailty, or systemic illness. Red is fulminant disease, formally signaled by hypotension or shock, ileus or megacolon. Peritonitis, organ failure, and rising lactate are late warning signs and should make you escalate urgently. Our case patient has leukocytosis and mild kidney injury without shock, ileus, or megacolon, so he belongs in the severe non-fulminant category. Severity classification is not just a laboratory threshold. It is the patient's trajectory. Older age, frailty, ongoing systemic antibiotics, worsening renal function, rising lactate, poor nutrition, and immunocompromise all make me more cautious. These factors should lower your threshold for closer monitoring, early consultation, and a stronger discharge plan. Fulminant C. Difficile can be deceptive. If ileus develops, stool output may fall, but the patient may be getting worse. Do not interpret less diarrhea as automatic improvement. Hypotension, shock, ileus, megacolon, peritonitis, organ failure, or rising lactate should move the patient into an urgent escalation pathway. The inpatient move is a bundle, not just an antibiotic order. Isolate early. Stop or narrow the inciting antibiotic if possible. Support the patient with fluids, electrolyte correction, nutrition, and renal assessment. Then stage severity, treat by severity and episode number, and reassess frequently in the first day or two if the patient is sick. For initial non-fulminant adult C. Difficile, up-to-date favors fidaxomicin when available and feasible, especially when recurrence risk is important. Oral vancomycin remains an acceptable alternative. Metronidazole is not a preferred agent. Modern data consistently show metronidazole failure rates exceeding those of vancomycin, so it should be reserved only as a last resort fallback when preferred agents are unavailable and the patient is low risk. If dosing is discussed at the bedside, dosing must follow institutional protocols. Fulminant disease is treated differently from non-fulminant disease. The regimen is vancomycin-based through the gut, with intravenous metronidazole as the systemic adjunct, and rectal delivery is considered when ileus limits drug delivery to the colon. These patients need high-acuity monitoring and early surgical involvement. In selected patients, diverting loop ileostomy with colonic vancomycin lavage has been described as an alternative to subtotal colectomy, but that decision belongs in an early multidisciplinary discussion. Early surgery consultation does not mean the patient is definitely going to the operating room. It means the team is preparing for the possibility of rapid deterioration. Shock, organ failure, ileus, megacolon, severe distension, peritonitis, rising lactate, or failure to improve should prompt early surgical reassessment. Recurrence planning starts before discharge. Older age, immunocompromise, severe comorbidity, ongoing systemic antibiotics, healthcare-associated infection, previous C. Difficile episodes, and unnecessary proton pump inhibitor exposure should all increase your concern. Ribotypes 027, 078, and 244 are classically higher risk strains. Ribotype 027, also called NAP1/BI, has been associated with fluoroquinolone resistance, binary toxin production, and worse outcomes in outbreak settings. Recurrent C. Difficile means the patient improved and then symptoms returned. If the diarrhea never improved, ask whether this is refractory disease, a complication, or the wrong diagnosis. If stools are still loose but abdominal pain, fever, and systemic features are improving, avoid reflexively calling that recurrence. The clinical pattern matters. For the first recurrence, do not simply repeat the same weak strategy. If the patient previously received vancomycin, a fidaxomicin-based strategy is favored when feasible. If the patient previously received fidaxomicin, vancomycin taper and pulse is a pragmatic, guideline-supported option, although the certainty of evidence is low. If the first episode was treated with metronidazole, the specific guideline-endorsed next step is a standard course of oral vancomycin. After repeated recurrence, Antibiotics alone may not solve the ecosystem problem. FDA-approved live biotherapeutic products are used after antibacterial treatment for recurrent C. Difficile to prevent further recurrence. Route matters. Rebiota is rectal. VOWST is oral and requires bowel preparation, so dysphagia or intolerance of bowel preparation matters clinically. In severe or fulminant disease that is not responding, the evidence concerns conventional fecal microbiota transplantation, not FDA-approved live biotherapeutic products, and that decision should be expert-guided. This is the update slide. Extended pulsed fidaxomicin has randomized trial support in adults at least 60 years old, but those data should not be overextended to multiply recurrent patients because multiple prior recurrences were excluded. TAPER-V is important because it directly examined a vancomycin pulse plus taper strategy in adults experiencing either an initial episode or a first recurrence of C. Difficile. It showed a strong early day 38 signal, including a high posterior probability of benefit, but the study stopped early and the day 56 primary endpoint remained uncertain. Bezlotoxumab is best taught as a historical milestone, the first FDA-approved monoclonal antibody against C. Difficile toxin B, proof that antitoxin prevention can work, but it is no longer commercially available in the United States. Now return to our patient. On discharge day, do not order a test of cure. Instead, document that stool frequency and systemic symptoms are improving. Confirm the patient can complete therapy. Review whether additional antibiotics are still needed. Reassess whether acid suppression has a clear indication. Finally, arrange follow-up because this patient is older, recently hospitalized, and at meaningful recurrence risk. Use the clear checklist. Course: the treatment plan must be feasible. Loose stools: the trend should be improving. Exposure control: hand hygiene and cleaning instructions must be given. Antibiotics: avoid unnecessary antibiotics after discharge. Return plan: give clear red flags and follow-up instructions. Patients should know exactly when to call. Return of frequent watery diarrhea, fever, worsening abdominal pain, distension, dizziness, low urine output, new systemic antibiotics, or inability to complete therapy should trigger contact with the care team. Most recurrences begin outside the hospital, so the discharge plan must anticipate that. 2 weeks later, our patient calls with recurrent diarrhea after initial improvement. This pattern is compatible with recurrent C. Difficile. But do not treat the test alone. Reassess symptoms, severity, hydration, medication exposures, and alternative causes. If the clinical pattern fits and no better explanation is found, manage this as recurrence using the episode-based pathway. This is one of the most important follow-up rules. Do not test for cure. A patient can remain test positive after clinical recovery. If symptoms return after resolution, then reassess and test appropriately. But if the patient is clinically improving, cure is judged clinically, not molecularly. After discharge, prevention becomes practical. The patient should use soap and water after toileting and before food preparation. If possible, avoid sharing a toilet during active diarrhea and for 48 hours after stool returns to baseline. High-touch bathroom surfaces should be cleaned carefully. In clinic, active diarrhea should trigger contact precautions, and future antibiotics should be used only when truly needed. Here are the 6 mistakes I want you to avoid. Do not test formed stool. Do not treat colonization. Do not miss fulminant disease just because diarrhea decreases. Do not delay surgery consultation in a toxic patient. Do not repeat metronidazole for recurrence. And do not discharge the patient without a recurrence plan. This is the final bedside algorithm. If there is diarrhea or ileus, isolate and assess. If there is a better explanation, evaluate that first. If testing is positive and clinically compatible, stage severity. Treat by stage and episode number, remembering the hierarchy. Fidaxomicin preferred, oral vancomycin acceptable, and metronidazole only as a last resort. Then prevent recurrence with discharge counseling, no test of cure, and symptom-based follow-up. We will close here. Use this lecture as a framework, not as a substitute for full guidance. Before making patient-specific treatment decisions, review the complete recommendations, your local testing algorithm, your formulary, and your institutional protocols. The best clinicians know the algorithm, but they also know when the individual patient requires deeper review.